She was running wild. Says no place for us. Morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. Here's Tim to start the service.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Unity of Michiana. Reverend Sandy has asked me to step in and provide today's service. She is visiting her family, specifically her sister, in California. So, well wishes to her on the cusp of a new year. Welcome to everybody online as well. We appreciate you being here and taking the time to tune us in and spend some time with us. We appreciate that very much. We are going to go ahead and mention our mission. Our mission, we are a heart-centered, multi-generational, and diverse spiritual community dedicated to teaching and practicing a positive life approach in our spiritual journey. And our vision, a world united in loving acceptance, celebrating inclusivity, harmony, prosperity, and awakened consciousness. I'm going to go ahead and light the Christ candle, and as I do, realize that it represents the Christ light in all of us that we share, that we each bring individually into this world, and let that reflect throughout this service as a reminder of that light within each of us. We're going to have our opening prayer now, so if you bow your head. Dear sweet Spirit, we thank you for this opportunity to come together, to share together, and to worship together in your presence, in your love, as we release the year 2023 into the past and grasp onto the new year with anticipation and love. Amen. Now, we don't have any children here today, but I would still like to bless the children. I ask that you rub your hands together, and we're just going to aim our hands up into the sky, into the universe, as we bless the children in our midst, which there are none here today, but across the world, with love, abundance, and grace, and we give thanks for the laughter, the joy, and the happiness that they bring into our world. Amen. John?
I usually do these two songs at the beginning of the year. It's kind of obvious once we get started why, but they're nice. They're nice songs, good thoughts. So sing along as much as you can. Bring it on, everything new, everything different, everything true, 'cause I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. Well, I'm through. And I'm through waiting, and I'm through hoping against all hope. I'm through longing for something gone that will never return. I think I finally learned to bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. I'm through grieving, and I'm through dreaming, and I'm the life I had is ever coming back. No more wishing on someone else's star that will never return. Think finally learn to bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. 'Cause I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. One more. This is the year for making changes. This is the year for moving on. This is the year of overcoming. This is the year for growing strong. This is the year for a new way of thinking. This is the year for making plans. This is the year for reaching out, and this is the year for joining hands. Gone all the lonely nights of yearning, gone all the black and cloudy skies, all of the cloudy bridges burning, all of the doubt and all the lies. This is the chance to recapture the power. This is the time to abandon fear. This is the moment my finest hour. This is the year, this is the year. This is the year that I put into action all my desires and all of my needs. This is the year that I follow my passion. This is the year of my dreams. This is the year that letting go and trying to change the ones I love. This This is the year I turn it over. This is the year I look above. This is the year that I take my intention to get away from distraction and talk. This is the year I take a step, and this is the year I walk the walk. This is the year that I put into action all my desires and all of my fears. This is the year that I follow my passion. This is the year of my dreams. This is the year I make it happen. This is the year I follow through. This is the year I move ahead on all of the things I want to do. This is a chance to rekindle my commitment. This is a time to abandon and clear. This is a year of money fully. This is a year. 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 That's a lot of song to sing, isn't it? But the words are so great. I know it's hard to sing along to. It's hard to sing by myself. But anyway, here we go.
That's a good song, John. Thanks. In Unity, most of us are familiar with the daily word. If not, if there's anybody joining new, there's a daily publication put out by Unity Church, and it offers an inspirational message for each day of the year. So today's message for December 31st, last day of 2023, is Let Go and Let God. With a grateful heart, I bid the year farewell. As the year draws to a close, I reflect upon the joyful times as well as the lower points of the past several months. In a prayerful moment of contemplation, I feel gratitude as I accept all of it. I may have laughed and cried, celebrated and grieved, but I made it. As days turn into weeks and weeks into months, I have met the year's events with faith and have grown resilient. Now it's time for me to let it all go as I prepare to begin again. I take the lessons of the past 12 months, their joys, their sorrows, and prepare myself for the new year. I let go and let God as I spiritually surrender my hopes and dreams and even my fears. I am divinely guided and infinitely blessed. I step boldly and bravely into a year that is mine to live to the fullest. Psalms 4:5, offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. And now we're going to move into a time of quiet meditation. We are going to take a look at the past year. How's it been for you? What have you got done this year? What things maybe didn't get done that you hoped to? Just start reflecting on the year and how it's treated you and how you've felt this past year. I'm going to step away and chime the singing bowl. As I do, let that tone resonate through you and bring back some memories, some hopes, and some dreams for 2023. As we concentrate more on our breathing now, we breathe in all the joys, the hopes, and aspirations of the past year. We let out all the fear, anxiety, we just begin to release and feel the memories that the year has brought us. Many good memories, many bad, but memories nonetheless. We've had some accomplishments and some disappointments. We've had some happy times, some sad times. But as the Daily Word says, we are still here. We are blessed. Even in the times of fear and disappointment, we learn, we grow, and we become more. We just take a moment of silence to reflect, to prepare for the new year, to release and make room for what is going to be coming up our way, both known and unknown. Concentrate on our breathing and rest in a moment of silence. As we breathe, we begin to look forward in our consciousness. We see the upcoming year with anticipation. We use the law of attraction to bring to us those things that we would like to see, those things that we would want to come to pass in our lives. We use both our imagination and our gift of vision to see those things in our lives, to see them come into reality, to see them as real, because we know that that is the process that actually happens. We are creators. We create our own future. We create our own destiny. We have that capability. God gave us that gift. And we use that gift to create a beautiful 2024 for each and all of us. I'm going to ask that you keep your eyes closed for just a moment longer as we move our focus and attention onto others, those around us, both near and far, people of the world, people who need our prayers. They need God's love. They need to know that we care and that God loves them. We put a moment's focus on that for just a moment. Put that out into the universe. That those people would feel the love that we have and that the universe and God has for them. People who are hurting, people who are scared, and rightfully so. Dear God, I end this year with this simple prayer. Please heal the broken people, make well the sick, restore happiness to those in despair, bring love to the lonely, food to the hungry, and peace to our world. Amen.
I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful for all that I am. I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful, I am so I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful for all that I am. I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful, I am so blessed. I've been doing this next song for a number of years as well. I always grew up with it and took it for granted, but in recent years it's become more meaningful, partly through a James Taylor version of it, and also when I got into Irish music, it's, you hear the second and the third verse, and it tends to make you think about the meaning a little more, rather than just a little kid singing, "Hey, all." But anyway, here we go. This is based on James's version. May old acquaintance be forgot, and never brought to mind. Should old acquaintance be forgot, and days of old lang syne, poor old lang syne, forgot in days of old lang syne. We two have run about the hill and gathered up lovers fine. We've wandered many a weary afoot since old lang syne. We two have sported in the brook from morning sun to night, but the seas between us have rolled and swelled since old lang syne. For old lang syne, for old lang syne, the seas between us have rolled and swelled since old lang syne. Oh, here is a hand, my trusted friend, and give me a hand of thine. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne, for old lang syne, for old lang syne. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. Thank you for singing along.
So today, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Brene Brown. She's a very good speaker, very, very intelligent woman. While Reverend Sandy is on vacation, we'll be viewing a talk by Brene, The Power of Vulnerability. Brene is a research professor at the University of Houston and author of 6 #1 New York bestsellers. She's spent the past 2 decades studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. So here's Brene Brown.
So I'll start with this. A couple of years ago, an event planner called me because I was going to do a speaking event. And she called and she said, I'm really struggling with how to write about you on the little flyer. And I thought, well, what's the struggle? And she said, well, I saw you speak, and I'm going to call you a researcher, I think, but I'm afraid if I call you a researcher, no one will come because they'll think you're boring and irrelevant. And I was like, okay. And she said, but the thing I liked about your talk is, you're a storyteller. So I think what I'll do is just call you a storyteller. And of course, the academic, insecure part of me was like, you're going to call me a what? And she said, I'm going to call you a storyteller. And I was like, oh, why not Magic Pixie? I was like, let me think about this for a second. And so I tried to call deep on my courage. And I thought, I am a storyteller. I'm a qualitative researcher. I collect stories. That's what I do. And maybe stories are just data with a soul, and maybe I'm just a storyteller. So I said, you know what? Why don't you just say I'm a researcher storyteller? And she went, there's no such thing. So I'm a researcher, a storyteller. And I'm going to talk to you today. We're talking about expanding perception. And so I want to talk to you and tell some stories about a piece of my research that fundamentally expanded my perception and really actually changed the way that I live and love and work and parent. And this is where my story starts. When I was a young researcher, doctoral student, my first year I had a research professor who said to us, here's the thing, if you cannot measure it, it does not exist. And I thought he was just sweet talking me. I was like, really? And he's like, absolutely. So you have to understand that I have a bachelor's in social work, a master's in social work, and I was getting my PhD in social work. So my entire academic career was surrounded by people who kind of believed in the life's messy, love it, and I'm more the life's messy, clean it up, organize it, and put it into a bento box. And so to think that I had found my way, to found a career that takes me, really one of the big sayings in social work is lean into the discomfort of the work. And I'm like, knock discomfort upside the head and move it over and get all A's. That was my mantra. So I was very excited about this. And so I thought, you know what? This is the career for me because I am interested in some messy topics, but I want to be able to make them not messy. I want to understand them. I want to hack into these things that I know are important and lay the code out for everyone to see. So where I started was with connection, because by the time you're a social worker for 10 years, what you realize is that connection is why we're here. It's what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. This is what it's all about. It doesn't matter whether you talk to people who work in social justice and mental health and abuse and neglect. What we know is that connection, the ability to feel connected, is neurobiologically, that's how we're wired, it's why we're here. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to start with connection. Well, you know that situation where you get an evaluation from your boss and she tells you 37 things that you do really awesome and one thing that you can't, an opportunity for growth. And all you can think about is that opportunity for growth, right? Well, apparently this is the way my work went as well, because when you ask people about love, they tell you about heartbreak. When you ask people about belonging, they'll tell you their most excruciating experiences of being excluded. And when you ask people about connection, the stories they told me were about disconnection. So very quickly, really about 6 weeks into this research, I ran into this unnamed thing that absolutely unraveled connection in a way that I didn't understand or had never seen. And so I pulled back out of the research and thought, I need to figure out what this is. And it turned out to be shame. And shame is really easily understood as the fear of disconnection. Is there something about me that if other people know it or see it, that I won't be worthy of connection? The things I can tell you about it, it's universal. We all have it. The only people who don't experience shame have no capacity for human empathy or connection. No one wants to talk about it, and the less you talk about it, the more you have it. What underpinned this shame, this I'm not good enough, which we all know that feeling, I'm not blank enough, I'm not thin enough, rich enough, beautiful enough, smart enough, promoted enough. The thing that underpinned this was excruciating vulnerability. This idea of, in order for connection to happen, we have to allow ourselves to be seen, really seen. And you know how I feel about vulnerability. I hate vulnerability. And so I thought, this is my chance to beat it back with my measuring stick. I'm going in, I'm going to figure this stuff out, I'm going to spend a year, I'm going to totally deconstruct shame, I'm going to understand how vulnerability works, and I'm going to outsmart it. So I was ready, and I was really excited. As you know, it's not going to turn out well. You know this. So I could tell you a lot about shame, but I'd have to borrow everyone else's time. But here's what I can tell you that it boils down to. And this may be one of the most important things that I've ever learned in the decade of doing this research. My 1 year has turned into 6 years, thousands of stories, hundreds of long interviews, focus groups. At one point, people were sending me journal pages and sending me their stories, thousands of pieces of data, and 6 years. And I kind of got a handle on it. I kind of understood this is what shame is, this is how it works. I wrote a book, I published a theory, but something was not okay. And what it was is that if I roughly took the people I interviewed and divided them into people who really have a sense of worthiness, that's what this comes down to, a sense of worthiness. They have a strong sense of love and belonging. And folks who struggle for it, and folks who are always wondering if they're good enough. There was only one variable that separated the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging and the people who really struggle for it, and that was the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging believe they're worthy of love and belonging. That's it. They believe they're worthy. And to me, the hard part of the one thing that keeps us out of connection is our fear that we're not worthy of connection, was something that personally and professionally I felt like I needed to understand better. So what I did is I took all of the interviews where I saw worthiness, where I saw people living that way, and just looked at those. What do these people have in common? And I have a slight office supply addiction, but that's another talk. So I had a manila notebook, a manila folder, and I had a Sharpie, and I was like, what am I going to call this research? And the first words that came to my mind were wholehearted. These are kind of wholehearted people living from this deep sense of worthiness. So I wrote at the top of the manila folder, and I started looking at the data. In fact, I did it first in this in a 4-day, very intensive data analysis where I went back, pulled these interviews, pulled the stories, pulled the incidents. What's the theme? What's the pattern? My husband left town with the kids because I always go into this kind of Jackson Pollock crazy thing where I'm just like writing and going and kind of just in my researcher mode. And so here's what I found. What they had in common was a sense of courage. And I want to separate courage and bravery for you for a minute. Courage, the original definition of courage, when it first came into the English language, it's from the Latin word cur, meaning heart. And the original definition was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. And so these folks had, very simply, the courage to be imperfect. They had the compassion to be kind to themselves first and then to others, because as it turns out, we can't practice compassion with other people if we can't treat ourselves kindly. And the last was they had connection, and this was the hard part, as a result of authenticity. They were willing to let go of who they thought they should be in order to be who they were, which is, you have to absolutely do that for connection. The other thing that they had in common was this. They fully embraced vulnerability. They believed that what made them vulnerable made them beautiful. They didn't talk about vulnerability being comfortable, nor did they really talk about it being excruciating, as I had heard earlier in the shame interviewing. They just talked about it being necessary. They talked about the willingness to say, I love you first. The willingness to do something where there are no guarantees. The willingness to breathe through waiting for the doctor to call after your mammogram. The willing to invest in a relationship that may or may not work out. They thought this was fundamental. I personally thought it was betrayal. I could not believe I had pledged allegiance to research, where our job, the definition of research is to control and predict, to study phenomenon for the explicit reason to control and predict. And now my mission to control and predict had turned up the answer that the way to live is with vulnerability and to stop controlling and predicting. This led to a little breakdown, which actually looked more like this. And it did. It led to I call it a breakdown, my therapist calls it a spiritual awakening. Spiritual awakening sounds better than breakdown, but I assure you it was a breakdown. And I had to put my data away and go find a therapist. Let me tell you something. You know who you are when you call your friends and say, I think I need to see somebody. Do you have any recommendations? Because about 5 of my friends are like, woo, I wouldn't want to be your therapist. And I was like, what does that mean? And they're like, oh, I'm just saying, like, don't bring your measuring stick. It's like, okay. So I found a therapist. My first meeting with her, Diana, I brought in my list of the way the wholehearted live. And I sat down, and she said, how are you? And I said, I'm great, I'm okay. And she said, what's going on? And I said, and this is a therapist who sees therapists, because we have to go to those because their BS meters are good. And so I said, here's the thing, I'm struggling. And she said, what's the struggle? And I said, well, I have a vulnerability issue, and I know that vulnerability is kind of the core of shame and fear and our struggle for worthiness, but it appears that it's also the birthplace of joy, of creativity, of belonging, of love, and I think I have a problem, and I need some help. And I said, but here's the thing, no family stuff, no childhood shit, I just need some strategies. Thank you. So she goes like this. And then I said, it's bad, right? And she said, it's neither good nor bad. It just is what it is. And I said, oh my God, this is gonna suck. And it did, and it didn't. And it took about a year. And you know how there are people that, like, when they realize that vulnerability and tenderness are important, that they kind of surrender and walk into it? A, that's not me. And B, I don't even hang out with people like that. For me, it was a year-long street fight. It was a slugfest. Vulnerability pushed, I pushed back. I lost the fight, but probably won my life back. And so then I went back into the research and spent the next couple of years really trying to understand what the wholehearted, what the choices they were making, and what are we doing with vulnerability? Why do we struggle with it so much? Am I alone in struggling with vulnerability? No. So this is what I learned. We numb vulnerability. When we're waiting for the call, it was funny, I sent something out on Twitter and on Facebook that says, how would you define vulnerability? What makes you feel vulnerable? And within an hour and a half, I had 150 responses. Because I wanted to know, what's out there. Having to ask my husband for help because I'm sick and we're newly married. Initiating sex with my husband, initiating sex with my wife. Being turned down, asking someone out. Waiting for the doctor to call back, getting laid off, laying off people. This is the world we live in. We live in a vulnerable world. And one of the ways we deal with it is we numb vulnerability. And I think there's evidence, and it's not the only reason this evidence exists, but I think that it's a huge cause. We are the most in debt, obese, addicted, and medicated adult cohort in US history. The problem is, and I learned this from the research, that you cannot selectively numb emotion. You can't say, here's the bad stuff. Here's vulnerability, here's grief, here's shame, here's fear, here's disappointment. I don't want to feel these. I'm going to have a couple of beers and a banana nut muffin. I don't want to feel these. And I know that's knowing laughter. I hack into your lives for a living. I know that's, God. You can't numb those hard feelings. without numbing the other affects or emotions. You cannot selectively numb. So when we numb those, we numb joy. We numb gratitude. We numb happiness. And then we are miserable and we are looking for purpose and meaning. And then we feel vulnerable. So then we have a couple of beers and a banana nut muffin. And it becomes this dangerous cycle. One of the things that I think that we need to think about is why and how we numb. And it doesn't just have to be addiction. The other thing we do is we make everything that's uncertain certain. Religion has gone from a belief in faith and mystery to certainty. I'm right, you're wrong, shut up. That's it. Just certain. The more afraid we are, the more vulnerable we are, the more afraid we are. This is what politics looks like today. There's no discourse anymore. There's no conversation. There's just blame. You know how blame is described in the research? A way to discharge pain and discomfort. We perfect. If there's anyone who wants their life to look like this, it would be me. But it doesn't work, because what we do is we take fat from our butts and put it in our cheeks. Which just, I hope in 100 years people will look back and go, wow. You know? And we perfect, most dangerously, our children. Let me tell you what we think about children. They're hardwired for struggle when they get here. When you hold those perfect little babies in your hand, our job is not to say, look at her, she's perfect. My job is just to keep her perfect, make sure she makes the tennis team by 5th grade and Yale by 7th grade. That's not our job. Our job is to look and say, you know what? You're imperfect and you're wired for struggle, but you are worthy of love and belonging. That's our job. Show me a generation of kids raised like that and we'll end the problems I think that we see today. We pretend that what we do doesn't have an effect on people. We do that in our personal lives. We do that corporate, whether it's a bailout, an oil spill, a recall. We pretend like what we're doing doesn't have a huge impact on other people. I would say to companies, this is not our first rodeo, people. We just need you to be authentic and real and say, we're sorry, we'll fix it. But there's another way, and I'll leave you with this. This is what I have found. To let ourselves be seen, deeply seen, vulnerably seen. To love with our whole hearts, even though there's no guarantee. And that's really hard, and I can tell you as a parent, that's excruciatingly difficult. To practice gratitude and joy in those moments of kind of terror when we're wondering, can I love you this much? Can I believe in this as passionately? Can I be this fierce about this? Just to be able to stop and instead of catastrophizing what might happen, to say, I'm just so grateful. Because to feel this vulnerable means I'm alive. And the last, which I think is probably the most important, is to believe that we're enough. Because when we work from a place, I believe, that says, I'm enough, then we stop screaming and start listening. We're kinder and gentler to the people around us, and we're kinder and gentler to ourselves. That's all I have. Thank you.
Wow, that was some powerful messaging. How do you feel about being vulnerable? It's a hard thing to do. Put yourself out there. It's very difficult.
How are you feeling about it?
Sue Ellen's asking, how am I feeling about it?
TEDx Houston
And
talk.
honestly,
I woke up the
it's
morning
difficult.
after I gave
It is.
that talk
It's a little bit tough to
with the worst
to
vulnerability
be
hang-up.
vulnerable and open up and put yourself in that spot, in that place. But we all have to do it. It's a necessary part of our existence. It's a necessary part of our growth, I think, to get up and do the things that we don't feel comfortable with. It's an important part of who we become as people, especially for the new year. You have to set some goals and try to grow and become a little bit outside of your comfort zone, outside the box, so to speak. How are you going to do that? What are you going to do? What's going to be your way? How are you going to address that? What are you going to do? Cliff, he's got himself a new residence. Very proud of you for this year for that. That's awesome. But what is your comfort zone? Patty? Sitting at home. What's outside of your comfort zone? Reaching out. A little bit uncomfortable with that. A little bit vulnerable. A little bit uneasy. How about you, Sue Ellen?
To tell Terry I love him when I'm really ticked off at him.
Isn't that difficult? Oh my gosh. You know there's love in there, but sometimes it's hard to access that part of it. That's being vulnerable. It really is, because she knows she loves him. They've spent decades together, the two of them. In 100 years from now, your house is going to belong to somebody else, very likely a stranger. Your car, your possessions, your belongings. It's even unlikely that people looking at your picture will even know who you were. I don't know my grandfather's father's name. How are people going to know we're here? How are they ever going to know that we were here? Not a famous writer, not a famous painter, not a president. How are they going to know? There's one way that they're going to know, because it's something that you inherited when you got here, and you probably didn't even know it. But for all those people that have lived and didn't make it into the history books, they forwarded and they brought to us God's love. They brought that to us without us even recognizing or knowing that. God knows we were here. God knows where we'll be in 100 years. There's a thin veil between the spirit world and the physical world. We can penetrate that veil. We can penetrate that with our words, our voice, our prayers, our thoughts, our dreams. Those things are very real. Excuse me while I take a drink of water, but they're very real.
When you talked about imagination, I was just listening to a teacher on the internet yesterday, and they were saying that we all talk about going to the fifth dimension, right?
Sure.
And he said, no, it's here, it's a matter of adjusting our perception. And he said, the fifth dimension is here, we're not going to go anywhere, we're going to change how we see things. And
Yeah.
he said, the reason I'm saying this to you is he said that imagination, like you talked about in the message, in the meditation day, that imagination is the tool. It's the most
It really
important
is.
tool that we have. It creates everything. So the synchronicity of you saying that.
Yeah.
Donald Martin says when you hear something twice in a short time, that it's God.
Sue Ellen was saying that the importance of using our imagination to develop our perception, how important that really is to our development and our acknowledgement of existence around us. It's so important. It's a wonderful gift that we were given to just be able to imagine, because I believe that when you do imagine, and I could be wrong, and I'm always open to other people's opinions and perceptions and their experiences, but when you use your imagination, you may hear the laughter of someone who's passed. You may hear their voice or saying your name. In my heart. That's not just your imagination. That's the ability of the other side to punch through that veil and communicate with us. Be vulnerable. Love with your whole heart. Practice gratitude and joy. And believe that you are enough. When we sing today's peace song, I would like to replace the word peace with love. Can we do that today? So moving on then, we're going to do our happenings and events. The youth are not meeting this week. Regular youth classes will resume next Sunday, January 7th. We have been gifted with a $5,000 matching tithe, and today is the last day. So it's an easy way to double your money and your gift to the church. Please give today. Everybody that you can, please do that. It's so important. It's such a wonderful way to double your gift. So today's the last day of that. 2,000 has been designated for the music department. So, and 3,000 has been designated towards a general fund. These gifts are the ones above and beyond your normal giving. So please give what you can and what you can safely afford to do so. You may donate online by choosing the matching tithe. There's a drop-down menu online. You can tithe to the general fund the same way. You can put a check in the mail. You can donate through our app, or put a check or cash in the box at the back, or excuse me, in the basket at the back of the room. In accordance with our bylaws, per best practices for nonprofit corporations, members of Unity are asked to reaffirm their membership status on an annual basis. You may renew your membership by filling out a form at the bookstore counter or by going to our app or website. Today is the last day to do that as well. So please do that. We want your opinions. We want your voice to be heard. We cherish your input, and we want to grow our spiritual center together with everyone's input. So Wednesday's group Zoom meeting is on recess until January 17th. Next Sunday is our Burning Bowl service, a great way to release the old and make way for the new. That's awesome. Perfect for January. The following Sunday, January 14th, we'll set our intention on a new year with the White Stone service. If you haven't participated in that before, it's a wonderful way to solidify your intentions and your goals for the new year, to become something better and greater than what you have already been. The Sunday after that, the 21st, we'll write our letters to God as we envision what the new year can hold for us. So this brings us to our offertory announcement. It's time to give what you can of your time, your talent, of your treasure. This place, if it means, and it touches your heart, if it means good things to you, if it brings good feelings to you, it's appropriate to put some of your time and talent and treasure towards it if you're getting something good out of it. We appreciate you doing that, and it's very important because we are a standalone operation. We only operate on the funds that we together contribute towards this cause of spreading God's word into the world. So please give what you can when you can. So if you would affirm with me together, God's infinite abundance blesses my life, filling me with joy and joy. I freely give and gratefully receive with love and celebration. Thank you, God, for the offerings that we receive as we carry the message of love and peace outward into our world and universe. Amen. And let there be love on earth.
Let there be love on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be love on earth, a love that was meant to be, with God as our creator, family all arranged. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let love begin with me. Let this be a moment now. With every step I take, let this be a solemn vow to take each moment and live each moment in love's eternally. Let love begin and let it begin with me.
And the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. God bless you and God bless us. Happy New Year, everyone.